while living in Denmark for 3.5 years, led a company that did the first mobilization of an internet service. We mobilized Microsoft Hotmail and Instant Messenger for the first time way back in 2001. This was long before the current mobile business. And after that, I moved to the United States, actually for CMG, and ran their operations in the Caribbean and North America until 2010. And then I spent 2 years running the commercial business for DirecTV in the United States, which was the largest business I have ever managed, including until today. I had over 1,500 full-time equivalents in my division and a P&L of over $4 billion US. And after that, I joined a turnaround on behalf of a private equity firm. We took a $350 million hotel technology company in the Midwest, specifically located in South Dakota at the time. We took it through what's called a controlled bankruptcy, which is basically we did a reorg in the US style. In the Dutch and Curacao style, when you say bankrupt, something really ceases to exist. In the US, that word is used basically for a reorganization process. And so that's what we did with that company. And I was one of the C-levels in that company, completely rebuilt the commercial part, everything from marketing to sales to customer support, sales engineering, and so on and so forth. And in 2016, I finally started my own company for good. And together with two people that I'd known for a while throughout my career, we started a fintech firm, and our focus in the fintech arena is specifically to leverage the blockchain in the international securities industry to create a role for Curacao. And that's very specific because as of 2016, I've been, half of my company is based in Curacao, so I go to Curacao a lot. Because of COVID, I haven't been to Curacao yet since March 12th. This year, but before that, I was in Curacao approximately every 6 to 7 weeks, and I've gotten heavily involved in the island as a result of that. Because of that, I became a member of the supervisory board of Curinde, and I'm also now a member of the supervisory board of APC Bank, which was just founded in May earlier of this year. So that's the quick summary on my side. And quite frankly, as a diaspora member of Curacao, I've always tried in every business that I was involved in internationally to bring it to Curacao. So when I was working in the mobile messaging industry, I always tried to sell solutions to Curacao operators, try to get them to base some of their business in Curacao, and so forth and so on. And we can talk later about to what extent those efforts were successful or not and why. Because I think the why is in particular important. So hopefully that's it. That wasn't more than my 10 minutes, I hope.
Thank you, Oz. No, it wasn't more than 10 minutes. Wonderful.
Okay.
And we'll definitely get back into some of those questions because I think it's important for people to realize why the diaspora comes back to the island or really does business with the island and makes it a point within their career internationally. But we'll come back to that. I think everyone has their opinion on it. Nasha, would you like to go next?
Yes. So I am Nasha de Jesus, and I am born and raised in Curacao, and I'm currently living in Curacao. After Radolfus College, I went to the Netherlands, and I stayed there for 20 years. I studied tax law at the University of Leiden, and the last year of my student life, at that time, you could prolong your student life. So I took a half-year exchange to study law at the University of Melbourne in Australia. So I lived there for 6 months, and then I returned. And I started work at one of the big six, at the time, six consultancy firms. So I started with Price Waterhouse, at that time only Price Waterhouse, without the Coopers. And later on, as a tax consultant for Art Anderson. And the last 10 years in the Netherlands, I worked for a Spanish multinational known for its retail multinational known for its Zara brand. So for the clothing brand Zara, Bershka, Massimo Dutti. I was an in-house tax consultant. During those years, I had the privilege to work and travel to many, many countries. So I have a lot of experience working with governments also from in Greece, Turkey, Russia, Brazil, Portugal. So a lot of experience from that side as well. During my time as a student and as a professional, I was always involved with Curacao. I was always interested in what things in Curacao. When I was a student, I was also a chairman of the Law Association and Antilles Law Association in Leiden. So there I organized various events with ministers when they were coming to the Netherlands. And as when I was working in my working life, I always joined an organization, an Antilles organization in Amsterdam, Antilliaans Network, where I organized at that time. That network was not really very, it was like died. It wasn't very active. So I organized a social gathering meeting with, at that time, not that known, and it was actually the start of their career, Isalinka Liester and Randall Carson. And my brother Ulrich de Jesus, they did a trio presentation. There were 200 people from Antilles coming from everywhere in the Netherlands to that event, and that was the start of restart of Antilliaans Network. So I was really always very much involved with Curacao. After 20 years, I returned to Curacao. And how it started is I was actually wanted to work for 3 years or 3 to 5 years in a different jurisdiction. So I was talking with Zara, with the management, to see opportunities for me to work in another jurisdiction, to be exchanged. And we were discussing at that time Switzerland and Russia. And then a best friend of mine told me, but if you're so much interested in working in a different jurisdiction, why don't you consider Curacao? And of course, we don't have Zara still today, as no Zara in Curacao, so it wasn't possible to do so for Zara. But the funny thing is that you never, as a Curacao-born person, never consider that, or I at least didn't do so. You don't consider going for 3 years to Curacao. You consider, or you either go back, and that's a one-way ticket, but not like a kind of exchange for 3 years. So that's how it encouraged me to return to Curacao. And now I am since then for 10 years already in Curacao. So the 3 years extended to 10 years. So that's for my introduction for now on. Yes, and since maybe lastly, I joined in Curacao. I'm 10 years now in Curacao. I joined trust companies. When returning, there are no multinationals in Curacao, so trust companies was for me the best options, being very international. Those are the companies that have many international clients, so that was one of the reasons I preferred to join a trust company. And I always wanted to be involved in Curacao as well in organizations. It took me very, very long, so maybe that's also something to discuss, but 2 years ago, I managed to become the chairman of CIFA, that's the Curacao International Financial Association, representing more than 100 companies within the international financial sector. So that's a short bio from my side and introduction from my side.
Perfect, thank you. From 3 to 10 is quite a thing. And it reminds me a little bit of my story as well, but okay. Olivier, I think your story is slightly different as well. Would you like to give us some insight into that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my name is Olivier Rikke. I'm currently living in the Netherlands and a few weeks a year in Curaçao still. But born in Curaçao, Korsow, but left the island at a quite early age. I was only a few years old when I went back to the Netherlands. My father had worked in the hospital for quite some years, and then he had to move back to the Netherlands. And did most of my schooling there. So high school, and after I finished high school, I actually wanted to go back to my roots. And when I was 18, I decided to do so. So I kind of volunteered to be bullied for a year by Phil Jarman, the captain of the Insulinde. For people who know the Insulinde, they know it's hard work. So that's what I did for a year long. I actually lived on the Handelskade for a year, which is great, actually. It's after that, I went back to the Netherlands for studies. Went to the Technical University of Delft. Finished my study there after quite some time. I took my time for study, let me put it that way. And then I started my career first in the transport and logistics world, afterwards in the consultancy world, and during my consultancy period at Atos, so the competitor of Logica CMG in this case, I actually came into contact with the banking world because I was actually one of the winners of the FD Career Challenge, where they offered me to do a free MBA and never turn out a free MBA. So that's what I did. I did my MBA at Nijrode in combination with Stellenbosch and Chicago. So I traveled the world for a few years there. And after I did my MBA, I actually met a friend of mine who worked in the financial industry. And he said, can you join me to do a big reorganization of GE Capital in Northwestern Europe? Which basically was, in the end, after 5 years, well, you did a bankruptcy case, Oz. Down case. So it was a big reorganization, let me put it like that. We stopped operations in the end, and now everybody freezes. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Am I still here?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Now you're back. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I froze for a little bit. Sorry about that. It's horrible weather here in the Netherlands right now. So, and after I closed down the bank, basically, I had to do something new with my life, and that was approximately 6 years ago. And I ran into an old college friend of mine who said, maybe the world of blockchain is something for you. And 6 years ago, hardly anybody had heard of the blockchain. A few people have heard of Bitcoin at a point in time. But I said, do you have some reading materials? And he sent me the Bitcoin white paper. And I didn't understand a single word it said, but I was hooked. And I thought this is going to be the future. So I deep dove into it and decided to make my full-time career out of it, which was next to impossible 6 years ago. But we proceeded, and basically where I am right now is at Ledger Leopard, and we are the biggest blockchain implementation firm of the Benelux, working on 20 block.
Now
You broke up, Olivier.
Yeah.
Now we did lose him.
Let's give him 1 or 2 minutes to see if it returns. Let me just get
But he's completely gone. No, there he is.
So maybe Renee, you could do the intro, and then when he comes back, he picks it back up, because what he's about to say about Ledger Leopard, I think, is very important for folks to hear.
Exactly. Let's give him just a few seconds, and if not, I'll do my quick intro, because in my quick intro, I have to get back at him for a moment, you know, so I want him to
Well, I think that one of the interesting things is that we are in the session for international financial services, and at least 3 of us are focusing on blockchain, which says enough. But okay, Renee, if you would like to get started.
Yes, sure. Let's do that. It's I hope that while we cannot see and or hear Olivier, that he can see and or hear us. Because I wanted to say that, of course, as a good UD Korsow, we all exaggerate a little bit from time to time. But him telling that working on the Insulinde was hard work, really, I mean, that's too much, you know. I mean, come on, guys. For the insiders, we all know what we're talking about.
There he is.
He's back to defend himself.
But Olivier, did you hear that?
No, I didn't hear it. Sorry, but I switched to 4G, so hopefully that's going to work a little bit better than my.
Okay, no, we're going to let you finish.
Okay.
In the meantime, while I was starting, I had to say, get it off my chest that, you know, we as UD Korsows, we all exaggerate a tiny little bit from time to time. But of course, you really overdid it by saying that working on the Insulinde was hard work. I mean, come on. Come on.
Obviously, doesn't know the captain very well.
All right.
We'll give it back to you. We'll give it back to you.
Olivier, you left off.
It's the same every single time that I tell people over here I go to Curacao for a week that it's going to be really hard work. Nobody believes me over here then for some reason. I don't know what that is, but well, it truly is. So where was I? I was at Ledger Leopard. And so a big tech firm, basically. We have close to 50 developers now, while we only exist for 2.5 years. So we're growing like madness. We doubled our turnover actually this year, even in COVID times. So apparently we are doing something right, which is great. Besides that, I'm doing a PhD research at the TU Delft. On governance of DAOs. You can forget that immediately as well. And I got my Go last week, which is actually great as well. And I do a lot of other stuff, being the spokesperson for the Netherlands in the ISO World Standardization Group on blockchain governance and smart contracting. And last but not least, I'm a lecturer at various universities. And that's also one of the things that I do a lot on the island, give training, provide consultancy, actually spread knowledge, because that's what I truly believe in, that if you spread knowledge, things are going to grow in the end, wherever it can. And one of the coolest things that I actually did is not the courses where I know a lot of your faces from, actually, but is working with the University of Curaçao, where I did my first class 1.5 years ago, and we're going to do a new one in Q1 2021. Where we basically train youngsters in what blockchain technology can mean for businesses and for economies, and what they can do with it, not only from theoretical perspective, but also building solutions. And that's what I really like, and especially on an island of Curacao, that is the best place to try out and start up new ideas, especially when you live according to the phrase that I want to live like, and that is think big, act small, and scale quickly. So have big plans, try it out in a environment that is small enough to really make it happen, because you can have big ideas in a big world, and then it's never going to work because it's too many people that you have to convince. And then after you found out that something has worked, then you can scale quickly, because you can prove something has worked. And in my point of view, the island of Curacao is the perfect environment to start up these kind of new ideas, and to really try them out and basically expand it from there. And especially with the experience that we have in the financial services industry, being innovative in that world, that is something we can leverage on much more, I would say, especially in this new upcoming economic opportunities, basically. So I'll keep it for that right now, and sorry for my bad connection all the time, but
okay.
now
I mean,
I
it's
switched to 4G, so it should be better now.
Thank you, Olivier. Renee, now it's your turn.
Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you. Yeah, quickly, also born and raised in Curaçao. My father is from here, my mother is from Holland, from the south of Holland. So those are the real Dutch, the good Dutch people, you know, the guys that like we do enjoy carnival. As I said, born and raised here, went to school here, did Radulfus College, did, as a matter of fact, the university where I studied law here first in Curaçao. And then I had the fortunate chance back then, and this is a long time ago, to join, I think, one of the most exciting companies that Curaçao has ever had, which was the company called CITCO, C-I-T-C-O. Back then, when I joined them, very small. Now, at this moment, by far the largest, for instance, hedge fund administrator in the whole world. A company where I learned a lot, where, you know, the mentality was really nothing is impossible, just go and do it. You know, in the beginning, and as you guys know, the company is really incorporated in Curaçao, started in Curaçao, and was sort of its predecessor was sort of the bakermat, the ground floor of our financial offshore industry. After studying in Curaçao, I went to the Netherlands, in Rotterdam, where I worked a couple of years, and then returned to Aruba, from Aruba back to Curacao, from Curacao to the British Virgin Islands, in the meantime also to the Cayman Islands for a couple of years, all with the same group, the CITCO group. The nice thing that back then, and I think it's really a very nice thing that back then it was still possible, you know, because it was more of, you would almost say, a family feeling in the business. So back then you could say, okay, you know what, I have done the trust business for a couple of years. I would love to see a little bit what bankers do for their salary. So I asked to be changed to the banking division, and had the privilege of for a couple of months being probably the best paid banking teller in the Western Hemisphere, because I worked six months as a teller, and then I went to reconciliation and stuff like that. The thing was, you know, you really wanted to learn, what does a bank do? Having said that, and if you then fast forward to where we are nowadays, and those are the things, and that's why I'm very, very happy with this initiative of the Diaspora. I'm also very, very happy with Priscilla, what you just mentioned, that we have at least 3, and if I count myself, even though I'm not an expert, I'm definitely a very avid promoter of the possibilities that blockchain is bringing to us. And I couldn't subscribe more what Olivier has just said. You know, there's a lot of things, there were a lot of developments, and there still are a lot of developments internationally that will always be difficult to launch or to start out of Curacao. Let's take a very normal example. I mean, I would love for our friend from Tesla, to Mr. Musk, to start a big production facility here in Curacao. Guess what? It's probably not going to happen, guys. But when you talk about financial services, when you talk about innovations in the financial services industry, again, I couldn't agree more with Olivier that this is a perfect environment. Here we can have our sandbox. Here we can play around. We can make the mistakes. We can tweak it up. And once you have something that's working, you roll it out. So that's one of the things that I'm very, very from a financial services point of view, very interested in. Having said that, and here is where I very often exchange of ideas with Mr. Eleonora, with us, the whole securities business that we are in, and of course we're a securities exchange, so we're in the securities business. But I would like to think even way beyond that, and as I fairly recently mentioned to some people, my goal or my dream is that anything that has any value should, at a certain stage, become tradable. This can be my glasses, this can be a glass of water, this can be anything. Anything of value should become interchangeable and tradable. And with blockchain, we're for the first time in our history getting into a situation whereby a big portion of that can be attained, and whereby finally, and that's sort of my goal, what I really would like to contribute to, a democratization of financial services. We have, and again, sometimes people think, yeah, he's against banks or insurance companies. No, I'm not against anything. I am very pro, though, a real democratization of financial services. And with that, I think I want to leave it for now. I'm sure that several of these topics that I've touched upon, some of the other speakers have way more in-depth knowledge and or ideas of how we have to do that. So we'll get there. And there's one thing I wanted to make. We have sort of done the 4 intros now, and then we would go later on to a panel, into a panel form. I want to, Priscilla, if that's okay with you, very quickly introduce, even though she's not going to make a long introduction, Loriani Ariasa, who is for me a very unique Korsow, but Loriani, you better explain that yourself.
Thank you, Renee. And also sorry for my bad connection at the beginning. Yeah, my name is Loriana Raza. I think you mean unique because I wasn't exactly born on Curacao. I was born in Venezuela, and when I was 7, my family decided to move to the island. So I moved with my parents, my brother, and my sister. And I actually lived 15 years in Curacao. So I actually consider myself a UD Korsow too. I'm very proud to have studied there. I'm also a proud Rodolfian, so I also went to Rodolphus. I did my bachelor degree actually also at the University of Curacao. I wanted to stay a little bit longer, so I had the opportunity to do the bachelor in accountancy there. That went pretty well, and then I wanted to also explore what does the rest of the world to offer. So I went abroad to the Netherlands, and I studied at the University of Tilburg. I did my master degree, and I also finished the RA. So now I'm a registered accountant, also known as a CPA in the US. And I've been working at PwC for now 6+ years. I'm a manager now at the Eindhoven office at the assurance practice. Yeah, so that's very short what
Thank you.
little bit of background.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a panel discussion, and we have, unfortunately, I can't see that we can get questions from an audience, but I have some questions, and I'll direct them interchangeably to everyone. And of course, if you would like to add something to it, please feel free to jump in. Let's see, where do we start? I think that one of the most interesting things is, of course, if you look at the diaspora of Curacao, there is part of, I want to say us, but part of the diaspora that makes it a point to do business with Curacao, either to come back full time or to do that from wherever part in the world that they live. And I'd like to explore a little bit what prompts you to do that. What was it, and what could you maybe advise to others who are not doing business with Curacao yet, either from their own companies or the companies that they work for, or in different roles that are possible? What would you advise them? Oz, would you like to start? I know you have some ideas on this.
So, yeah, sure. So a couple of things. Obviously, I mean, I left Curacao when I originally left to study to go to boarding school and then go to college. Like I said, I studied poli-sci in the beginning, and initially I wanted to be a politician. I wanted to come back and run the country. I changed my mind on that because I did an internship. And what I saw during that internship was, I guess, let me put it this way, it dissuaded me from wanting to become a politician. So I went away from that idea. But it never left me that I always wanted to do something that would benefit the island. And I think, you know, I haven't met any UD Korsow, and whether born or not on Curacao, I think that's an interesting thing that Loriani, sort of her being who she is, highlights the fact that UD Korsows have very many different backgrounds, and it's always been that way. And I think it's one of the unique things that we should always keep. We should treasure that as well, right? So you know, Oliver was born and left very early. Loriani wasn't born there, but spent a lot of time there. I mean, that's what makes Curacao the way it is. I was born on Curacao, but left when I was 2, and I didn't come back until I went to Mill. So I think that's part of what makes us who we are. And we should always treasure that. And I think that part of what it does is it puts something in you that you always want to either come back or do something that helps the island. And I've never met a UD Korsow outside of the island that didn't want to do that some way. I do think that what makes it tricky, there's a couple of things that make it tricky. Number one, you learn when you're doing business on an international stage, especially if it's very large business, that it's not that easy to bring that business to the island. So when you're on the island, people talk a lot about bringing business to the island and all these kind of things, and it should be possible. And look at Shell. I think Shell was a once in a lifetime thing. And in a way, it was great for the island, but in a way, it was also very bad because it gave us the wrong impression of why a large company would choose to establish such a large operation on a tiny island. And I'll give you an example. When I worked for DirecTV, at one point, it just so happened right when I was at DirecTV, they were looking for a place to relocate their regional satellite base. And I thought, fantastic, Curacao is perfect. It was right in the years where there were a lot of hurricanes. So this was between 2010 and 2012. There were several hurricanes that wiped out all of Puerto Rico's infrastructure and all this stuff. And so it was a great argument for me to make that Curacao was a safe place also geographically because we're protected from hurricanes and all these kind of things. However, what you learn when you go through those business cases, I mean, I was a key executive, right? I was in the second layer of DirecTV. I was a senior vice president. I reported directly to a C-level. So I was involved in all of the core conversations about how these kind of investments are made and justified. This would have been a multi-billion-dollar investment, and it would have had to have a horizon of at least 15 to 20 years because it's the life of the satellite and you're trying to get a return on that satellite. And unless you're going to sell it or completely change services, you know, you need that satellite to pay itself back over 15, maybe 20 years because the satellite costs like $4 billion just to put up there, right? Not to mention what you have to do to sell the service and all those kind of things. And so when somebody's making a decision about that much money, what you realize is that they tell you that, listen, tax benefits don't matter. At that level, tax benefits are not going to make me put a business in a particular country. And not even the hurricane danger made that big of a difference. One of the things that made a huge difference was whether the country they were going to put it in was big enough that if worse come to worse, they could actually make a return just inside that territory, which ended up with them choosing between Puerto Rico and Brazil won out, obviously, because Brazil is so big that even if all else fails, they could just sell subscriptions to Brazilians and make the money back. So it's only when you experience those kind of things that you realize that there are other reasons why some of these things are difficult to do. So that's on a, I'll call it negative, but it's not really negative. It's just learning, right? You learn this when you actually are there at the table and you can experience how these decisions are made, why the decisions are made, and how the analysis is done. On the other side of the equation, I would say that one of the things that makes it difficult as a member of the diaspora is that as a member of the diaspora, you're treated the same as a foreigner. So all of us right now who don't live in Curacao, Loriani, Oliver, and myself, we are no different than a foreigner because we don't happen to be living in Curacao. And I think this is a huge loss for the island because what we should be doing is we should be considering every Korsow. And when I say Korsow, I mean everyone who describes themselves as a Korsow, right? Who is out there in the world should be part of us. And we should structure it in such a way that those people have an extra benefit by being a Korsow that enables them to have additional incentives to bring business, get involved with Curacao. Because if I'm treated the same as a foreigner as soon as I step foot off the island, that means it's just as difficult for me to come back as it is for a foreigner. And it shouldn't be that way, right? So that's the second thing I would say. And then the third one that I would say is that on the flip side of the negatives, there are a lot of positives. I think Renee mentioned them and Oliver mentioned them as well, which is that we are a rather small size and we can serve as a sample test ground for things. But I do think that in order for that to be successful, it means that we should have a much more entrepreneurial look on things. We have to be willing to take risks. And there is a certain extent to which being part of the Dutch kingdom, the mentality is not very much of a risk taker. We have been taught to be risk averse. And we have to become a little bit more risk taking in order to be able to take advantage of some of these opportunities of being a test ground for different things. So sorry for the long-winded stuff, but
That's perfect. Thank you. Loriani, I would like your take on this. I mean, you're the youngest one on this panel today. And obviously being here, it means that you're interested in how we can promote and quote unquote, sell Curacao abroad. Listening to us and building on your own experiences, what is your motivation for this?
Yeah, very nice words of us to start with. I think it's very difficult for us to come back in the sense that you want to come back, you want to give, I personally want to give the island back what it gave me when I grew up there. So it's for me, it's very important. But on the other hand, it's quite difficult because I feel that we live, the island is like very old. They have a very old mentality in most of the companies. So I feel like they don't want to give the young professionals like the chance to come with new ideas. So they're very holding back, okay, the old way of doing business, the old ways of doing things, of using maybe older systems, or we need to invest. We need to invest in our people. We need to invest in our businesses. So we also need to invest in bringing younger professionals back to the island, give them the opportunity to make changes, to come with new ideas and listen to these ideas and not say, oh no, you come from the Netherlands, you live there, so now you think you can change everything. It's not that way. We need to start thinking differently. And
is there a way that you think that the diaspora itself can help in solving these challenges? What I'm always trying to look for is a two-way situation, a win-win for both sides. So
yes.
It's my opinion that it's not only the island that should benefit from the diaspora, but also the diaspora that should benefit from the island.
For sure.
But also in solving those challenges that you just mentioned. And are there some specifics that you think that could work?
In ways of solving the challenges, or
in ways of the island innovating itself in ways that you just described, so that we move away from what is old school and what is business as usual here to going into that entrepreneurial mindset that Oz was also mentioning.
Yeah, I think it will just bring a lot more people that also want to grow as professionals and want to make changes. I mean, you work for 40+ hours a week, so a huge part of your life is based on your work and where you work. So I think if you get the opportunity to grow somewhere and to make changes, it will give young professionals the feeling like, oh, I can make a change. So you will come back, you will go back. And I mean, if I compare the work-life balance in Curacao with the work-life balance here, it's a lot better. So there are a lot of positive things, on the island that can bring people back. But we also need to do something regarding the possibilities to work there and to work on your profession and as a professional.
Yes, definitely. Completely agree. Renee,
can I pitch
sorry,
on?
Go ahead, Olivier.
Yeah, I want to pitch in on that one, because I actually think that you're pointing to an excellent point there, and that is that the work-life balance in Curacao is in a lot of ways much better than it is in the Netherlands, I would say. And I think there is at the moment a huge opportunity for Curacao, also due to the situation that we have been in the past year, because one of the biggest problems that we faced, at least here in the Netherlands, was that it was very hard for a lot of people to work from a distance, because people were expected to be in their office all the time. And actually, I would say right now there is a huge opportunity where Curacao can advertise themselves as being a place for young entrepreneurs to start their business, because you can do business from everywhere in the world right now. If we have proven something in the last 9 months, is that the geographical location where you're at is not important for doing business at all anymore. Just in a few minor situations you want to sit face to face, but for the rest of the time you can do everything via Zoom calls or whatsoever. And then you can pitch into the natural benefits of the work-life balance of Curacao and the whole atmosphere that's there to attract young entrepreneurs to start working there. And then you can actually pitch into the diaspora that actually live, for example, in the Netherlands, because I know for a fact, and I know that you know them as well, but there are a few young people, brilliant, talented young people, for example, Priscilla, Effect.ai, you know those guys. They are actually part of the diaspora as well. They have close ties to the island, and in line with what Os said, it doesn't matter if you were born there or have lived there for several years, but everybody you talk to outside the island that was either or is either a Korsow or lived there for a long time and called them a Korsow, but you have this common ground and this very close tie with the island that people want to go back every single time when they got to. And that's a huge opportunity right now to attract young talent. But then, and this is a call for the government, to create an environment where young startups can actually, in an easy manner, start settling on the island without any hurdles in this case. And that is a challenge for the government, I would say.
I would like to even take it a little bit further than just having to settle on the island. I think that, as Olivier rightfully mentions, is that we have noticed that it doesn't matter in which jurisdiction you live or in which country you live at the moment. But if, as a part of the diaspora and as part of making it easier, like Os was saying, for the diaspora to not be treated like a foreigner with regards to the island, that you could set up your business as an entrepreneur in Curacao without actually having physically to be here all the time. And I understand that it's going to take a lot of effort on the innovative side to get everything in place so that you could do all of those things via the internet to set up your business and to manage that, etc., without having to have this complete infrastructure that we've previously seen the financial services sector having to provide to foreigners. So bringing that to Renee and Nasha, who are here on the island, what do you see happening, which maybe is not very well known abroad, that is on the innovative side, that is promoting these types of ideas to engage the diaspora more towards the island? Maybe specifically to the financial sector, but perhaps in general as well.
Ladies first.
Okay. I think, first of all, it's good to realize that the financial sector changed in the sense that, because we are all hearing that it's not important anymore to be physical here. So that's true, and that you see that people can contribute from anywhere in the world. We see us. We see there are a lot of people. Adric, they live in the Netherlands, but they're still very much involved with Curaçao. So that you already are seeing those kind of changes. Apart from that, the international sector changed in the sense that you really can set up a business from here, because our island is very small. As also mentioned, we don't have, we only have 160 inhabitants. So we really need to do business, because now financial sector is easy. You can set up your business here. We need it. In that sense, it changed. Now you need to have substance here in order. You can do financing easy from Curaçao, but financing, for example, companies outside of Curaçao. So, and you can, based on the regulation, because this is very new regulation that Curaçao introduced recently, it is possible to do so. And even you have to have, of course, experienced person, whether it's in Curaçao in combination with foreign. Yeah, not everything needs to be performed from Curaçao. So you can have this combination and still have a lot of benefits And we are, of course, in this market, we can, we have the US, we have Latin America, we have from here with the internet, we can have access to all the world. And because we have we are big, as Renee mentioned, Citgo is one of the biggest one. We need to make use of those networking that the world does know us. So we have to make sure that from Curacao we can interconnect with the world, and not necessarily having all of us here, but you can contribute from where you are. So I think actually for the diaspora to contribute and to make these changes and this entrepreneurship, because it is true that you don't see a lot of, we are a small community. So it is true what Loriani said, that you don't see, or you don't get the feeling when you come to Curacao that you really have a lot of opportunities, but because the business is so changing, you are seeing the differences. I mean, I work for Intertrust, and for example, they are very much digitalizing itself. There is a lot of, we work very much, there are now people from Curacao that are not working for the Curacao office, not working for only for Curacao, but for different companies within the organization. So you will see from Curacao this kind of movement as well. And I think that we could promote that more also, that international multinationals, so Shell doesn't have to come here, but it can, it can have departments here as well. So there is, coming back to the question of Priscilla, at least from the legislative side, we already are ready for those kind of developments. So now we just need to execute them more and actually market them more.
Yeah, if I can jump in, and it's interesting. One of the things I find personally extremely interesting is that when you look at the financial services, a few things. Let me take one step back. We're having this conversation within the context of the National Export Strategy. Okay, the government has decided, okay, we're going to look at 5 or 6 or 7 sectors that are important. Guys, let's focus on this. What are we doing good? What are we not doing good? What should we change? How can we make the export of these services better in the future? That's one. And this, of course, obviously, the rebuilding or the reinvention or whatever you want to call it of the financial service industry is an important one. An interesting development, like we've just seen mentioned by Olivier and by Nasha, yes, indeed, we're not stuck to one place anymore. We can work from basically anywhere. That's fine. That means that people from abroad, Curacao abroad, can do stuff here locally, but also up the other way around. People, like Nasha was saying, in their company, people who are based here can do services for clients outside. What is within the financial service industry, and in any case, makes it even more interesting is that when you combine those facts with the fact of a better balance between work and life on the island, and on top of that, the newly nowadays required real substance requirements for certain financial services that also, beyond purely the financial services, wants to have certain tax advantages. I think you have a very nice cocktail of possibilities. And what we have to do, in a lot of cases, we always point the fingers to the government, and I think rightfully so, in the sense that the government has to create the conditions that we can, the right conditions that we can run with. But also what we have to continue to do, and we need the diaspora for that also, is, go to the government and say, guys, for this sector, and we're doing this right now, again, within the National Export Strategy, for this sector, what you need to do for us is this, and this. Why do we say this? Because we think so, and because the referral, the input from our Curacao who are active in this field abroad has indicated that these are important things. Here's a list with 12 steps or with 14 steps or whatever, do it, and then we will run with it. And if you have that, and I think for again, we want the diaspora to do a lot of things, but you cannot, as a UD Korsow abroad, and I'm here now again, but you know, I've worked abroad for a whole lot of years, and people who wants to do any business, and again, I don't pretend to know about other business, but I think I know a little bit about the financial services industry. The financial service industry has its particularities. People are interested to do that, but you need to show them a very clear, objective path that they can walk, and that they know that if I tick these things off, I'm in and I can do my stuff. And that then once they're in and they can do their stuff, they can work from abroad or work from here for clients outside, and that they have systems, yes or not, that's fine. But that's what we need. We need input from the diaspora, work on it, come with a tick list, go to the government, say, guys, please fix this, and then we can run with it.
All right, so Loriani, going to Renee's points, what would you say as part of the young diaspora of the island are two of the most important issues you think the island needs to address in this regard?
Yeah, very good question. I think for us abroad, it's very difficult to see, okay, what opportunities do we have on the island? There's not really like I would say like a pool of the vacancies or something like that. So I would say that is number one. So if you're considering, you don't know where to start, you also don't know what you need to do to go back. What Oz was saying, like we are seen as foreigners, so we don't know when you go back, okay, what do I need to do? The other way around, I also think there's it's difficult for companies that are looking for young professionals, maybe linked to Curacao, to see, okay, who is abroad? There's also no database about that. So I think it's both-sided. Like there should be a database for young professionals abroad that want to come back and to be able to see, okay, what are the opportunities? And the other way around, there should be a database for companies that want to, you know, bring young professionals back to also see, okay, who can we contact, and maybe email to see if they are interested in coming back. So I think it's both-sided. Also, here in the Netherlands, there's like, for example, a tax ruling where you, if you're from abroad, you get like some income tax benefits for working here. So maybe that could also be a thing, like give diasporas in this case the chance to go back and give them benefits so they will be able to invest on the island.
Yeah.
So,
Can I remark on that, Priscilla?
Yes, of course, please go ahead.
Because I have me myself personally, so I do understand what you're saying. It's very difficult to find out the possibilities. What I did at that time, and it was at that time already, so I just came on vacation and I went to speak with a lot of companies, because most of times there is not really at that moment something, you know, but then you get the feeling of where it's heading. But that's something of course, we need from a sector to look at that, what you're mentioning. But another way is by coming and go and ask.
I also agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and but I think, oh, sorry. I didn't want to interrupt, but I wanted to say, like, I think it also, it depends on how many people you know. Like, not everyone will open the doors. If you talk at a big bank and say, hey, listen to me, I'm a professional abroad. So I think it depends on how many people you know on the island, and that shouldn't be the case, because if you're a good professional, you should be able to work on the island if you want to. Yeah,
that I agree with you. Yeah, you have to have network. That's Curacao. And the other thing I wanted to comment is, of course, we do at this moment, I mean, for myself, for example, one of the challenges in coming back to Curacao was two sides, in the sense that I was working for a multinational that is no multinational. So from your professional perspective, what are the possibilities? So that's indeed a challenge. So it's must of a choice as well, whether you want to find something. But the other very difficulty was the salary, because I remember that when I took the decision that I said, okay, I want to work for, at that time, at a trust company, and then they, and I thought, no, you must be joking, you know. But there is, of course, tax rules already, even from my time. So based on those tax opportunities, it was possible for me or for my employer at that time to offer me a tax benefit offer. So it wouldn't make it for the employer more expensive and even still attract. And we are currently in the sector working on amending the income tax regulation in order to attract more, not only diaspora, but anybody, foreigners who want to come here, entrepreneurs, not only, but also employees. If a company wants to attract foreign employees, in order for them to have better tax opportunities, like you see in other jurisdictions like Singapore, Portugal. So we are also, and the minister is very open for that. But apart from that, of course, one of the challenges of Curacao, apart from the taxes, is of course to get the licenses. If you are not a Dutch citizen passport, it's very difficult to, and that, I think that was also what René was referring. It's very important as well that companies and people know that how they can come to the island and what they need, and if they have that in place, that they can, you know, that within a certain period of time they can enter the island. So so we are working on that to improve that as well.
Yeah, that's very nice to hear.
So there's a couple of things that I'd like to cover. There's a lot of stuff going through my head. So the first one is I'd like to challenge the notion that the diaspora link needs to be one where we try to bring people back to the island. And I'd like to take what Oliver said a step further, not only because the pandemic has shown that you don't need to be in a place in order to contribute to the place. I think it should actually be a stated strategy for the country that your diaspora is part of your country. And just so I didn't invent this idea. Some of you will be familiar with the Silk Road strategy of China. The Silk Road strategy of China is exactly that. They could replace the word Silk Road with diaspora strategy. Literally what they're doing is they want to spread their tentacles around the world, both from a business perspective, a financial perspective, and from a physical presence perspective, sending Chinese citizens all over the world. They are doing this as a stated strategy. And the reason why they're doing that is because it is a way for them to literally spread the influence of their country and also bring revenues to China. So I don't see why Curacao couldn't do the same. You don't necessarily have to bring back all the people who have left to go study somewhere else. What you need to do is find a way for those people, whether they come back or not, to somehow be involved with the island and contribute to the island. And like I said before, everyone I've met who has ever been involved with Curacao and considered themselves a Youth Korsow wants to contribute in some way or the other. Many of them, it's not within their plans to come back right now, maybe when they retire, and maybe they don't want to come back, but they still want to contribute. And as a country, it's incumbent upon us to think of a way, how do I tap into that desire of theirs and figure out a way that they can contribute and they get something back as well. That's one. Yeah. The second thing I think we should evolve our thinking is, especially given the size of our island that is so small, it is highly unlikely that when you send 200 to 300 students to go study abroad every year, that you're going to have enough jobs for those highly trained and highly skilled people to come back on a continuous basis. It's very unlikely, right? So what you want to do is you want to create an environment where those people can maybe create their own businesses, especially if you look at how economies are developing these days. The younger generation, most of the time, doesn't actually take long-term jobs. They take gigs. I'm sure that Oliver will tell you that when he looks at his 50 developers, I would be willing to bet that they're not all on his payroll. I don't know his business at all, but I know the blockchain, and it's highly unlikely that all of them are on the payroll. Lots of them live all over the world, and they just have a contract that they develop for his company. That is the kind of model that we can also develop, both people living in Curacao that can develop for countries abroad, but also people abroad that can develop for companies in Curacao, both ways. That's the second thing I wanted to mention. The third thing I want to mention is I want to get to some concrete examples. So I mentioned in my intro that I'm on the board of Curinde and I'm on the board of APC Bank. First of all, how unlikely is that a guy that is supposedly in the blockchain business is now on the board of a bank? Well, specifically, I'm doing that because this bank aims to become a digital bank. And because most of the realists among us who are involved in the blockchain don't run around saying that banks are going to disappear, because that is a highly unlikely scenario. What's going to happen is the nature of banking is going to change. It's going to evolve. They're not going to look in 20 years like they look today, but they are still going to have some kind of role. And one of the things that I would like to help is for a bank on the island to get onto that path. What is a future bank going to look like? What does a digital bank look like? That's why I got involved. Now, I mentioned that also because one of the things I had to overcome to get into those two supervisory boards was this notion that if you are not physically present, you cannot be on the board. Now, on top of that, it turns out that I became the chairman of the board of Curinde, and I'm now the chairman of the board of APC Bank. In the case of Curinde, I was able to be on the island so often that I was actually, except for one meeting, out of 14 board meetings, I only did one of them virtual in a 2-year span. In the case of APC Bank, because of COVID, I have done none of them in person. And the reality is that there is no difference in the quality, the content, the contribution, or the commitment of myself to those board meetings and to the work that needs to be done, whether they were virtual or physical. It is just a mentality. So one of the concrete ways that we can tap into our diaspora talent is to get them involved in boards, because it is a way for them to, not on a full-time basis, but still be very involved in the local community, the local economy, the local environment, to refamiliarize themselves. Because one of the things that happens is when you leave very young, you get disconnected from that local environment and you need to relearn it. And being a member of a board is one of the ways that you can relearn it. You bring your expertise and your knowledge from the international market, but on the other hand, you as a diaspora member are learning, you're re-engaging and refamiliarizing yourself with your country. So it's a mutual benefit in that sense. And the final one that I would suggest is, even if it's not a formal board, I would, in Curacao, develop much more the notion of advisory boards and get diaspora members involved there again, because their expertise and their networks can be leveraged so much for the local business community. And the final one is establishing yourself in Curacao. Look, I'm Yudi Korsow. I love the country so much that I've been battling to get stuff done for the past 4 years. A foreigner who wants to do this, or even a diaspora person who wants to do this, but is even slightly less obsessed than I am, would not have continued this long. And it shouldn't be that difficult. So one of the things I'm hoping for is that by me doing these supervisory boards, for example, people learn that you don't have to live in Curacao to be on one of those boards. The other thing I'm hoping is that people learn that if you make it so complicated for a diaspora member to start a company, keep the company alive, report the taxes, report all the different things that you have to do. If you make it so complicated, you are going to be left with so few people who are willing to jump through so many hoops that you don't get the effect that you intend. It has to be easier. Some of that is government. Some of it is, I would say, semi-government, because some of it is central bank. And they can make some changes too to make some of these things easier. A friend of mine, if you look at Argentina right now, where I know that Priscilla worked in Argentina, right now, I know people from the blockchain industry literally who want to leave Argentina. And because they know me, they are interested in going to Curacao. One of the first questions is, how much money is it going to cost me to set up my first company in Curacao? And when you tell them that it's probably going to be somewhere around $2,500 to $3,000 minimum, they go, whoa, that's a lot. And it's not because they're poor. They have the money. It's just in the bigger picture of things, you don't assume that it's going to cost you that much just to register a company. Normally in the US, in the Netherlands or whatever, you figure a couple of €100. And yes, I'll spend more money on other things, but not just on the establishment of the company as such. You know, so those are the kind of little practical things that we can do to make it easier for people who want to contribute to the island to actually contribute to the island.
2 points on that. I think that one, I'm going to ask you for examples of how people could get on boards, or how companies could find people to get on their boards without having to go through all the, let's say, being on the island that you did the last couple of years, because I know that contributed a lot to it, but not everybody has the time span or the money to be able to do that. So that's one. I think that in general, doing business in Curacao should become easier, even if you live here. And it is, I mean, I have my companies here. Sometimes it's really beyond me. And I think that it's something that we desperately need to work on for every sector of everyone that wants to do business on the island. I think that is a key item for this, for the National Export Strategy to really focus on, because it shouldn't be, it even shouldn't be a hurdle that we need to overcome. It should already be solved. But maybe we can go back to how people could reach out to companies, or how companies could find people to be on their boards without having to be presently here. If you have any suggestions for that.
Yeah, so, well, the first one is, and I'm always a proponent of start with yourself. So one of the things that I'm doing as a member of this board is, of these two boards, is I'm making it my responsibility to make sure that any other positions on the boards that need to be filled are filled by diaspora folks. So I'm trying to perpetuate as much as I can. The second thing is that I think that when it comes to these boards, in the case of Curinde is 85% owned by the government. I think there should be a requirement. We have now an SBTNO, right? And SBTNO, all they look at is, do you have a good resume and can you pass an integrity test? I think that's, I mean, that could be any country. To me, there should be an extra requirement. You have to have some kind of link with the island. And if you are a diaspora member and you also have all the qualifications, then you have priority to fill the board seat. That should be a basic requirement. There's nothing wrong with that requirement. We should institute that, because that will incentivize every entity that is looking for a board member to first go try to find a diaspora member before they easily opt for someone else, or before they opt for the same person over and over and over again. That's number one. Number two, I think that, and I think Loriani mentioned this in the beginning, there are some GDPR limitations to it, but we should have a database. And as far as I'm concerned, it could be voluntary. One of the easy ways to get around GDPR is to make it voluntary. If you make it voluntary, then you're not violating any rules. And like I said before, and I think more of us have mentioned, I haven't met a single diaspora member yet in my entire life who is not interested in somehow getting involved. If we went out and we said, if you are a diaspora member, no matter where you live in the world, if you sign up for this database, you will be considered for board positions in Curacao, I guarantee you everybody will sign up, because it's a way to get involved. So let's do that. and make it available. Let people know that A, we value your expertise. We'd love to get in touch with you. And B, guess what? You don't have to move back. You can start contributing wherever you live right now. Just start by signing up for this database and we start to get you involved. That's how I would start it out. And as far as the doing business part, I 100% agree with you that it's the same for local businesses as well. My friends and my sister, and I mean, and you know this, Priscilla happens to know this, but I know how hard it is. And I think it's really crazy. We have to make it easier. And I'll give an even more urgent example. As economies start to change, our old way of licensing and establishing businesses becomes even more and more cumbersome all the time. An example I will give is esports. I've been involved in helping to promote esports on the island as a professional opportunity for the past 2.5 to 3 years. And I can tell you that the largest esports organization on the island has yet to incorporate itself. It's not because the guy doesn't want to, it's because it would cost him more to just set up a BV than it does for him to register for a tournament, for an international tournament. That's crazy, right? So instead, what he's doing is he's doing everything on contractual basis, and he can't set it up as a BV yet. We just finished finding an investor for him that's going to invest 10,000 guilders. And again, and luckily the guy is smart enough and he listens to his advisors. He's like, I'm not going to spend 35% of the money I just raised just to establish a BV. That's crazy. I'm going to spend it on actually growing the business first, right? So it's an example of, as economies evolve and new types of businesses come up, we really have to change some of these approaches. Otherwise, it's going to leave us behind. And I don't think that we need to be left behind. These are changes that can be made. It's just a matter of, do we really want to grow? Do we really want to participate in the new economy? Then we have to listen. If Oliver says, listen, man, I'd love to have a pool of developers in Curacao, but I mean, I'm not going to pay 5,000 euros just to establish a BV. And I'm not going to pay crazy, obey taxes and all these things just to employ people. That doesn't mean I want it for free. I just want something that makes financial sense. Otherwise, as a CEO, I can't justify it in my business, you see? So those are the kind of things that I think we need to do.
All right. Thank you. We don't have so much more time to go, but I always like to end on a positive note. So I'd like to focus on some of the pros of doing business with Curacao. Olivier, I'm going to start with you. What are, from your experience or things that you've heard, what are some of the great things you've heard about doing business with Curacao?
From my personal perspective and my personal experience is one of the greatest things that I encountered is that everybody, once you start working on the island, are eager to cooperate with you. And if you have a good idea, they say, hey, this is cool, and how can we start working together on this one, and how can we build on this together? So there is a certain eagerness to learn and to develop it into new business and new ideas. So that's what I really like. Also, the whole work-life balance environment that Loriani mentioned before, I think that's a great one as well. So these are two very, very important pros, that people are eager to do business, eager to learn, eager to start pitching in on the ideas that you bring in combination with the great work-life balance that you can have there. So these are two of the elements that I see that are very important and really pros on working together on the island.
Yeah.
Before we continue, I see that there is one question from the audience, specifically for Nasha, asking where they can find the regulation that you mentioned. I'm not sure which regulation they mean, but I'm guessing it's the one that if you would like to come to live here, that there are certain fiscal benefits that you can have. I'm guessing.
Yeah, yes, I assume that's the one. Yeah, where you can find it, yeah, it's called, it's a tax expat regime. So yeah, where you can find it, that's a good question. I don't think you can find any information on internet. So you can just contact SIFA, and I will make sure you get more information about it. It's depending where you live. I mean, it's if you live in the Netherlands, it's nearly the same. It exists in the Netherlands as well, the expat regulation. And it has a requirement that you shouldn't have lived for more than 10 years in Curacao. So if you are a diaspora for only 6 years, then and you want to come back, then it does not apply. You should have lived longer than 10 years abroad. And then when you come back, and if you have special expertise and you have to, your gross salary has to be a specific limited amount, then you can, your employer can apply for that. But if you want specific information, then please contact SIFA at our website, and then send us a message, and we can help you with more information about that.
All right, thank you.
And I would like to say what's pro of doing business in Curacao.
Go aheid.
I think the happy hours after working time, you know,
they
that's
don't
one
exist
of the...
anymore now. I think they just canceled it today.
Yeah, they just canceled it today, but that's, of course, being a small island, it's more easier to do so yeah, you know, just after work, have a drink with someone and go home. So that's yeah, it's again the work-life balance. So of course there are a lot of other good things, but that's one, of course, remarkable.
I'd like to add a specific pro. So one of the things that I've experienced personally is that I can probably take a team of anywhere between 2 and 4 professionals of Curacao and match up against a team of 15 to 20 anywhere. And I know that that sounds extreme, but it's not. In the US, for example, where I live, where I do most of my business, when you are dealing with a contract and you go to a law firm, you are dealing, especially if it's a large contract, and if it's, for example, in the technical industry, very quickly you end up dealing with 6 to 8 lawyers, because each one of them has one specific area that they're super good in, and that's what they come in to do, and all these little things. I have done this. I've taken business folks to Curacao to talk business, to talk complex business opportunities. And they have all been shocked at the fact that with just 2 or 3 people, 2 or 3 professionals in Curacao, we can cover vast amounts of business types. We understand the rules, we understand the regulations. And part of it is because we are so small and we don't have the luxury of over specializing for our entire careers. We are forced to have to look at different rules from different countries, how things work, not just in Curacao, but in neighboring countries, in Europe, in the US, etc. This is a massive benefit that we have that I think we underestimate a lot, and that we really should not underestimate so much. And I think also that Curacao professionals can be easily retrained for things, and that also is something that we underestimate. Generally, when you talk to people, they're like, well, people here don't know XYZ. And I'm like, yeah, but they've learned 15 other things. They could learn one more thing. It's not rocket science, you know? So that part, I think, is a huge, huge strength. And I hope that people are aware of it. And if they're not, then I do my best to try and spread the word on that as much as possible.
Thanks. Renee?
Yeah, but I think, you know, if we and I can understand that we have to start wrapping up. The combination of positive factors and possibilities, because I never believe in negative factors. There's a few little things, like I said, on the tick-off list that we have to finish, and then the combination of what us and Olivier just mentioned, people once you get going, people are indeed pretty eager. And people work very hard. It's Nasha makes fun of us liking our happy hours, and we definitely do. What people do forget is that in Curacao, because of the work and life balance, I've had it. Thank God I have some gray hairs now, so I don't have to do it that often anymore. But believe me, in the past, there have been sufficient days and weeks where you can easily work 10 or 11 hours from 8 in the morning till 7 o'clock in the evening. But you know what? At exactly 5 minutes past 7, you are at that nice happy hour. And so again, those life is good if you want to work hard on the island. And to finalize, I couldn't agree more with you. Our focus should not be, because we have done that a lot of times, and especially in political circles, you hear that, we have to bring our people back. No. We don't have to bring anybody back yet. Let everybody who's outside there, in one way or the other, bring some business to us, either themselves or other people. And once you start getting that, and you have at the same moment, you have a basis of good processes. I always get back to my tick-off list. You have a good tick-off list for anybody, whether it's diaspora or non-diaspora, to come to the island. Things will start moving. And yes, indeed, let us, and I think, and I hope, and I'll be more than glad to sort of I wouldn't say lead the way, but definitely discuss this with the people who organized this from Mayo. Let's start building that database. We need that database, and I agree with you, we in a very good Curacao way, we will just tell them, listen, guys, you're more than welcome, but you have to sign a waiver that we can use all your information. So no GDPR. That's we can fix that. That shouldn't be a problem.
Well, it doesn't have to be
you
all.
You can put me on the list, René. You can put me on the list. You can put me on the list.
We put Oliver on the list. And let's be clear, because maybe some people will get confused. When we say it won't be all information, right? I mean, GDPR is there to protect a lot of personal data and all that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about just knowing where people are, what their expertise is, and then if they are eligible or a candidate for a certain board position, then obviously you go into detail. Yeah. But at this stage, it's just to know who is where and what do they know, so we know the value of that diaspora network.
And it goes beyond indeed board lists and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's very easy. Let's say if I talk about the company that I'm working for now, the exchange, the Dutch Caribbean Securities Exchange. If I want to do a roadshow in the Netherlands, you know how easy it is for me if I can go to a YDK diaspora list and say, hey guys, we're gonna be there, during such and such week. Can you, do your utmost to get me interested parties? These things work. You get people involved, and so yeah, let's start to work on that. And I think with that, I pass it back to you, Priscilla.
Yes.
I think we're
done. I don't see any further questions anymore. So unless someone has some closing remarks that they would like to leave us with.
Yes, I would like to close a remark to all participants, all the diaspora. For now, I mean, we don't have the database. Yes, we don't have other, even if you don't consider coming back, what you can immediately do is share on social media when you see something organized by Curacao, whether it's by Mayo, whether it's by CIFA, CFC, DCSX, share it, because that's the biggest exposure that we can have. If each one of you just share something that's coming from Curacao, that would be very great already. So thank you.
Cool.
Thank you. You're absolutely
Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, guys.
Can I make one last suggestion? I hope, because I saw that the participation level was pretty low, and I think one of the things Saeed said to me on the messaging was that the government had an emergency press conference about COVID that happened right during this. So hopefully this was recorded, because I see the recording on my screen. And perhaps let's get everybody to provide an official approval so that this can be reposted, because I do think that this conversation is important and it needs to be heard by as many people as possible, so we can also get as many more ideas as possible on how to activate our diaspora.
Sure.
I'm sure we can arrange that.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening. And for those in the Netherlands, thank you for joining so late in the evening.
Yes, indeed.
Bonoci.
Thank
Boa
you.
noite.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ayo.
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 Bye.
Ayo.